Hi, good morning. This is Mayor Valensky with Driving Markets. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing US Treasuries and US debt. Very interesting when looking at overall US debt. So in 2023, the US Treasury or the Fed has issued around about $10 trillion of debt. Now that debt is split into old debt that's being renewed and new debt that's being financed. All that money is being issued and debt created in order to finance the US. So the debt that the US is in is rising, probably quite similar to the household debt in the US that's rising, and we're going to have a major banking crisis. The banking crisis in the US is going to be absolutely huge. We're talking about a major crash, bigger than 2008, and yet the US Fed and the government is trying to put a band-aid, a plaster over the gaping wound. They never really got over the 2008 crisis, but that's going to come to resurface in the next few months. So get ready for a massive banking crisis in the US. So going back to the debt, they've issued $10 trillion, of which the US government is going to have to pay interest on that, which is fine. However, the problem is that their revenue coming in, the money coming into the Treasury, is getting less and less and less. So their actual revenue is dropping, but their expenses are rising. At the moment, they have a 34 trillion debt, and that's going to be rising again once the government, once the Congress and the Senate will have to raise the debt ceiling to an even higher level to accommodate the more debt that they're going to need to finance the US. So the $10 trillion was issued this year. Now the biggest purchasers of US debt is China and Saudi Arabia. Both those countries are on the path to de-dollarize their affiliation and their obligation and their commitment to the US dollar. So the China is trying to de-dollarize by going for a gold-backed yuan, which is their national currency. By making it gold-backed, they want to make it a reserve currency, more secure, and therefore the world will be more open to the Chinese currency. Worst thing possible, because China in control, things are going to go downhill. It's going to be very communistic and totalitarian. And then you're going to have Saudi Arabia, which is looking to de-dollarize the petrodollar and make it into another currency. Both those countries have stopped buying US debt. The third purchaser of US debt are the banks. Now the banks know that the US is in trouble, so the banks are demanding a higher yield, a higher return on US debt. Remember, the outlook for the US was moved to negative by one of the credit rating agencies called Moody's. They moved the US down to negative outlook due to a bad overall management, fiscal management, which is money management, and governmental management, which is the split between the Democrats and the Republicans. So not only is the US issuing a load of debt, they're not going to have the money to pay for it going forward. Why? I said again, because Saudi Arabia and China are not going to buy any more treasuries left to the banks. Now there was a auction a few weeks ago, about 4 or 5 weeks ago, 500 billion US dollars, and it was just about subscribed, just about got through the door. Up until the last few days, it was 70% subscribed, and people don't want US debt. They're suspicious that the US will not have the wherewithal to pay for these interest rates as the clock is ticking. And they already have huge amounts of debt and huge amounts of interest to pay. This is going to lead to a bigger problem, which is a banking crisis. So not only is the US in trouble, the regional banks are in trouble, and the US household is in trouble. Again, remember the US is the biggest economy in the world. So the US typical household is now defaulting on credit cards. They've got trouble with their mortgages because the mortgage rates are 7% on the new rates, but on the old rates, they're just about getting by. They're not making enough money on their salary, and the cost of living has gone up. And that is going to create a massive banking crash. We are on track in 2024 for a major banking crash at all levels, top tier level and at lower level. And what they're trying to do, what the Biden administration is trying to do, is cover it up and therefore have a position whereby there's not really a problem, everything's fine, everything's hunky-dory. Considering most of the jobs being created in the States are administration jobs and taken on by government agencies, there's not a lot of productive jobs being fulfilled or being opened up. Now, higher yields will lead to a stock market crash, because that means it only becomes more expensive. So the markets that are going to crash will be the Nasdaq, the Dow, the S&P, the DAX will fall. Not necessarily the UK 100, because that's a defensive index. So you're going to have markets that will fall significantly in 2024. What you need to be looking to do is probably get into gold and maybe some Bitcoin, and have money taken out, cash reserves, which probably should withdraw from the banks, because you won't be able to go to the cash point and get any of your money, because the banks won't have any money because they themselves are in trouble. So 2024 is going to be an interesting year. Keep an eye on it. You can share, subscribe, comment. Hoping you're enjoying these videos, and catch you later.